Hello, John Bloodworth, Gentleman Crafter here, with the first in a series, a brand new series, of adventures in machine embroidery. Now, as many of you know, I've had an embroidery machine for quite some time, and I've been diving deeper into it over the last couple of years with the help of Tack embroidery digitizing software. So this series of blog posts, which will last throughout 2022 on a weekly basis, will feature my adventures, good, bad, ugly, whatever happens, happens, and I will basically share them with you. So there will also be, theoretically, a free embroidery file for you to download as well. It'll be in the EMB format, which is native to Tack embroidery digitizing software. So do make sure you pop over to the website and download a free copy if you haven't already got one, and try it out for yourself. I'll leave a link below the video in the description on YouTube, and of course a link on my blog as well. So this first one is going to be me just showing you how to make a very simple in the hoop mug rug. Can't say that it went as well as I'd hoped, but the theory is there and I came out with a finished product. So let's crack on. So this is the mug rug that I'm going to show you how to make. It's a nice little plaque with place T here. Takes just 6 steps to create, and it's very simple to put together. So I'll start a new document. I've chosen my embroidery machine and the hoop size that I will be using, and I'm applying the template on screen so I can see basically some guidelines to help me place the shapes. I've also set my units to Imperial and Auto Fabric to Pure Cotton. Now the first thing that I need to do is to digitize a square. So I go into the Digitize toolbox on the left, click on Rectangle Square, and then just drag out a rough square, clicking once at the start and once at the end. After selecting the Select tool, I'm basically going to make a couple of changes to this. First is make sure it's an outline, then a single stitch, then turn off proportional scaling and size it to 4.5 inches. Next up, I'm going to create an outline heading inwards, so it's a negative number, 0.125 inches. Just one offset with a single run and then a sharp corner. Turn off include holes to make this work, and there I have my second border. Now the first one is going to be the placement stitch, and this will be the tack down stitch. So I want to stop in between, so I'm doing them as 2 different colours, although I will actually stitch them with the same colour. I then apply the same offset to the inner square, and this will be the final thing, so I'm actually colouring it as number 6. I have the other objects to add first, and I will resequence later. Now the next thing I will do is digitize a circle, so click in the centre of where you want the circle, drag it out and then press enter twice. Now I want to set this at 3.15 inches. So I just type those in the width and height box at the top. Set it to satin stitch, and then the stitch width to 0.250 inches. Excuse me. I press Ctrl D to duplicate, and then apply colour number 3 and apply colour number 5 to the original. The second copy I will apply a fill to and just use the basic tatami stitch. Now for some text, so into the lettering monogramming toolbox. Type the text in the lettering box on the right in the Object Properties panel. place tea here. Could also be coffee, could also be hot chocolate, whatever you fancy typing. And I've changed the font to Microblock. That's one of the already digitized fonts, and changed it to color number 4. Now I'm going to select all of the objects. You can do that by either dragging a selection box or pressing Ctrl A, and then I'm aligning it vertically and horizontally. That's just to make sure they're all aligned. Now I'm just going to resequence those shapes. So color number 6 is going to come to the end. 3 obviously goes after 2, and 4 obviously goes after 3. That took some working out. I will discard the other colors on the palette at the bottom left, just purely because they're a bit confusing. Now, as I said, I want to stop between each of these stages, so they need to be individual colors. However, the only things that I really need the colors to be relevant for are the border, the background, and the text. So I'm just going through and changing those now using the Threads palette. So selecting the object in the sequence panel and then choosing the color from the Threads palette. Now I did the border as black, but I didn't want to do that, so I can quickly go back in and change that to red. I'm just checking none of the others are red, as in the colour numbers, otherwise that will confuse the machine. Well, it'll confuse me. Okay, just dropping everything down now, and I want to go into the design information, and this is a cool feature of the Hatch software, because basically I can type in all sorts of information here and then create a reference sheet that I can keep in a folder offline. So print it out with the design, and it'll tell me, what colors I've used, the name of the file, any comments I want to add about materials or fabric, whatever really. So the first bit is just general information, so the title, subject, author, etc. Design information is just automatically generated, but then on this third tab we have this bit here, which is the stop sequence, and we can click on element next to a color to give it a name. So I'm giving each of these a name so that I know what they do. The first square that's stitched out first will be a placement marker. The next will be a tack down stitch. Then I'm working through the design in background, text and border order. That rhymes. And then the final thing is to stitch the final bits of fabric together while it's still in the hoop. Now, it doesn't make a huge difference with the actual file on the embroidery machine, but like I said, if we come over to print preview, you can print off a design worksheet that has the design itself, all of the colors used, the color numbers, the elements, what they're for, change it to portrait, landscape, whatever you need to do. And it's got all the information about the design there as well, about size and stitch number. So very, very handy. And none of it you've had to work out yourself. Now, when it comes to transfer the design, definitely save it as an EMB first, so save design. That means you can come back in with an A grade design to edit later. And then, of course, you will want to export the design in the format that your machine will support. You can also export an image of the design. So if you want to keep that in a digital folder with the actual embroidery file, then of course you can. Now I've gone ahead here and loaded up a double layer of tearaway stabilizer, and now I'm stitching down the placement square. So this is the full size of the square including seam allowances, and it's basically a guide for where I will position the piece of fabric that I'm going to use as the top layer of the coaster or mug rug. Now you can spray the back of the fabric with a spray basting or a fabric glue stick, or you can just hold it in place for the next step. It's up to you. So what I do now, excuse the phone. So what I do now is position that piece of fabric, like I say, within that square of stitching. And then without changing the colour, I will just start the next round, which is basically the tack down stitch. So it's working about 1/8 of an inch in from the edge and just stitching that square in place all the way around. This stitch line will fall within the seam allowance once this project is complete. There we go. So then now that's down, basically I can start working through the design. So I'm definitely speeding this up a lot, but the first thing that I do is the tatami stitched circle. So that's in white all the way along, and I did unfortunately have some thread breaks. I think there were some tensioning issues. In fact, I know there were some tensioning issues because it started to pucker a little bit. So if I did this again, I would definitely take a look at that and see whether it's the stitch length or the push-pull compensation that I need to have a look at. Next thing was to stitch out the text, and then after that came the border. Obviously I've chopped this video up quite a bit, but as you can see it's nice and simple. And then the final stage is to get a couple of other bits of fabric, which I cut at 4.5 inches wide by, now I'm pretty sure it was 3 inches tall, folded over a 1/2 inch seam allowance, and just stuck that in place with a bit of quilter's tape just to hold it in place while it's there. And then what I'm doing is positioning the bottom piece first, level with the bottom edge, excuse me, and then the top piece level with the top edge. And the final square that will get stitched will be basically me stitching all of these layers together, which I think is very clever. It's all in the hoop. Now I was a bit presumptuous there, so I'm just trying to make sure that corner's down before I continue. And in this instance I basically just held the fabric in place because I didn't obviously want to use any glue on top of the stitching, the embroidery stitching that is. Just be careful of your fingers because they will go through. So just making sure that things are held down as the needle goes over them. And then basically when it's finished, everything comes out the hoop. Trim the stabilizer down, trim the corners, and then turn it right sides out. And it's that simple. I say that simple. Obviously I need to mess around with the compensation stuff. Anyway, there is my little coaster, turned right sides out. Cute, isn't it? As is my little mug. Okay, so a couple of teething troubles with in the hoop, which is actually my first attempt at in the hoop. Something I need to look into, something I can work on over the coming weeks. If you've any tips, please feel free to leave them in the comments below the video on YouTube, or of course on the blog. In the meantime, thanks for watching, and please remember to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe for notifications of future videos. In the meantime, take care, and I'll see you next week.